Good morning, everyone, all of our fellow commissioners and those who are attending on our from the public. We are honored to be here this morning after a short hiatus in August. I hope everyone had a great summer or is having a great summer, got some rest, and we're ready to get back to work. And so we're going to call this meeting to order and open up with roll call.
All right, Commissioner Anaya.
Here.
Vice Chair Arton. Commissioner Kate Clark.
Present.
Commissioner Cinnamon Clark.
Commissioner Cinnamon Clark here.
Commissioner De Los Rios. Commissioner Desert made us aware that she would not be attending today. Commissioner Elliott Santos.
Present.
Commissioner Evans.
Present.
Commissioner Farouk. Commissioner Fowler. Commissioner Garcias.
Present.
Commissioner Griffith Jones. Commissioner Hassan. Commissioner Hodges.
Present.
Commissioner Ismail.
Present.
Commissioner Corey and Commissioner Legaspi also let us know that they would not be here today. Commissioner Murray, Vice Chair Murray Ramirez.
Present.
Chair Nash.
Present.
Commissioner Perez.
Present.
Sheriff Ray.
Present.
Commissioner Roberts.
Present, sir.
And Yoli Apalaxui on behalf of the District Attorney.
Present.
All right.
Great. We will now go with our land acknowledgement.
And let me just share my screen, and you should have all received a letter from Vice Chair Murray Ramirez as an attachment to the agenda. And last meeting, you all voted to have land acknowledgements at the beginning of the meeting. And this is a land acknowledgement that Vice Chair submitted in his proposal. So I'll read it out loud today. In recognition of and respect for Indigenous peoples as traditional stewards of the land that we now call the County of San Diego. For millennia, the Kumeyaay people have been a part of this land. This land has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced them for many generations in a relationship of balance and harmony. As members of the San Diego community and inhabitants of the Ma'at and Tepe Kumeyaay territory, we acknowledge this legacy. We promote this balance and harmony. We find inspiration from this land, the land of the Kumeyaay. And thank you, Vice Chair Ramirez for that land acknowledgement.
You did a good job in your pronunciation.
Thank you.
I have a concern. I do support the idea of giving recognition for the Indigenous people that were here, as is done in Australia and South Africa. I thought it was just going to be a statement that we give recognition and respect for the Indigenous people who were here for a millennium or so, because there have been other groups here. But as I said before, I'm concerned that it doesn't become a prayer. And this really, really does sound like a prayer. Maybe not in the traditional Christian sense, but it is a prayer. You know, I want to honor anyone, any and all Indigenous people, regardless of where they are. But at the same time, I don't want to be in conflict with my own belief system.
This is Commissioner Ramirez. This is not a prayer. In fact, this acknowledgement is used by many government bodies up and down the state, and that is where I got it from.
All right.
Thank you, Commissioner Evans, for sharing your concerns. And thank you, Vice Chair Nicole Ramirez, for clarification. We will now move on to the teleconferencing meeting option pursuant to Government Code Sections 54953E. We find ourselves here again.
That's right.
Commissioner Roberts would like to move that we accept that and not go through it again.
I'll second that.
So I have a motion and a second. We will take the vote. Commissioner Anaya,
Aye.
Vice Chair Arton, Commissioner Chason, Commissioner Clark, Kate Clark,
Aye.
Commissioner Cinnamon Clark,
Aye.
Commissioner De Los Rios, Commissioner De Los Rios, Commissioner Desert, Commissioner Elliott Santos,
Aye.
Commissioner Evans,
Aye.
Commissioner Farouk, Commissioner Fowler, Commissioner Garcia,
Aye.
Commissioner Griffin Jones, Commissioner Hassan, Commissioner Hodges,
Aye.
Commissioner Ismail,
Aye.
Commissioner Corey, Commissioner Legaspi, Commissioner Murray Ramirez,
Aye.
Chair Nash,
Aye.
Commissioner Perez,
Aye.
Sheriff Ray,
Aye.
Commissioner Roberts,
Aye, sir.
and Yoli Apaguidi on behalf of Somerset.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes unanimously.
Great, great. Next on our agenda is public comment, which provides the public with an opportunity for members to speak to the commission on matters within the commission's jurisdiction, but not an item on today's agenda. Any public comments?
And we do have members of the public in attendance, but we don't have anyone with their hand raised to speak, and we didn't receive any request to speak via email.
Okay. Great.
But I do see Commissioner Elliott Santos's hand is up. I'm not sure if you want to pause. Take her comment.
I'm sorry, I couldn't raise my hand quick enough during the land acknowledgement portion. And so I just wanted to ask, because as a member of one of the local Kumeyaay tribes and the Kumeyaay Nation, I would just like to be able to maybe work with the chairs of the committee and also with Commissioner Evans, just to give a level of comfort. We certainly don't ever want to infringe on anyone else's religious rights, but we do absolutely appreciate and want to hear those land acknowledgements. Our people have lived here for thousands of years, and that has been proven by science. So we want to be respectful, and just wanted to ask if we could have a discussion about that at some other time. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Elliott Santos, and certainly we will have a discussion around the land acknowledgement. The more education, the better we'll be informed. Thank
Well,
you.
let me go on record. I do support, this is Commissioner Evans. I do support the acknowledgement. All right, I definitely do support that. I'm
Thank
just
you.
looking at how the words is worded.
Thank you. And we can work to ensure that, again, as Commissioner Angela De Soto just said, to ensure everyone's comfortable with the wording and that we're educated and informed. I must admit, even myself, there's more education that I need around this particular most important land acknowledgement subject. Thank you.
I do appreciate it, and I look forward to it. Next month in September will be California Indian Day,
Oh.
last Friday in September. So I think this is a great time for all of us to have this discussion and also acknowledge that in this area, yes, there were the Kumeyaay people, there were also other neighboring tribes, the Cahuilla, the Capeño, the Luiseños. So I think if we could have set up a time and discuss this, and then maybe next month, if there's something that a small presentation of some sort in honor of California Indian Day. Thank you all.
Perfect. Okay, we will now move to agenda item 6, in custody jail deaths update with our own Deputy Sheriff Ray.
Yes, thank you very much for letting me go early in the agenda. And just remind everybody that when my segment's over, after any questions, I have to step off and I catch a plane. But I wanted to make sure I was here for this meeting to cover this part for everybody.
Thank you.
During the court, and I'll answer any questions that come up afterwards that may be in there. Just to give you a brief overview. So in 2022, we've had 15 in custody deaths. One of those was a homicide. 6 of those have been determined to be accidental overdoses, poisonings. 4 of those are unknown, but we suspect them to be accidental overdoses or poisonings. And 4 of those were considered natural deaths by the medical examiner. Of those 15, 8 of those people expired while they were in the hospital. 3 of those we released early. We made 3 compassionate releases so the family could spend time with their loved ones before their time came. I would like to note that in the Sheriff's Department, we count everybody. Whether they're in our custody or whether they're released, whether they're in the hospital. There's 58 Sheriff's Department up and down the state, and the majority of Sheriff's Departments, the great majority, only count people that pass when they're inside their jails. If they send them to the hospital, they won't count them, but we are trying to be transparent and count everybody that we've touched or worked with or been a part of. So that's where our numbers are. So I say eight passed in the hospital, and we count them all. In fact, I believe one of the recommendations from the JLAC audit was for the state to come up with a normalization or a reporting process so that all 58 counties report jail deaths the exact same way. Now, going back for the past 3 months, in June, of course, there were no in custody deaths. In July, there were 5. In August, there was 1. And I'll take you through the starting in July. I would love to give you all of the investigative material. I just can't. I'm precluded by sharing some of the information. What I can tell you was that starting in July 2nd, we had a person who our deputies saw signs of distress. We believe that it was an overdose. The medical examiner has not yet reported. We took him to the hospital, the patient to the hospital, and 4 days later, they expired in the hospital. On July 13th, we had another person that we believed was overdosed. Both of these people were given Narcan by the deputies, taken to the hospital. It is yet to be determined, but we believe it's natural causes, and 24 hours later, the person expired in the hospital. On 7/22, we had an individual die of natural causes. He had been in the hospital for over a year. He'd been in our custody for about 1.5 years. And when he came to our custody, he was with us. We immediately sent him to the hospital for issues that he had. He came back. After 2 months, he was in our custody for several months, and then we sent him to the hospital. He was there for over a year, had a bunch of issues, and he passed on 7/22. On 7/22, the same day, we had an overdose suspected death. The ME hasn't told us yet, but this person did not make it to the hospital. They were in our custody. And then that would be the 5. And then on 7/27, we had another overdose death. The doctors did say it was an overdose of narcotics. And this person was also in the hospital. So for the 5 that expired in July, we're waiting for the medical examiner to tell us what the cause was. For 3, we believe they were overdoses. And going back to the 15 that we've had, we know 6 were certainly overdoses. We believe another 4 were, so that would be 10 overdose deaths this year. And then in August, we've had one overdose. This person was just last week. They came back from court at 7 o'clock at night. Within 30 minutes of being back in their cell, we noticed that they were down. And again, this was, we believe, an overdose death. The medical examiner is doing that report, and when we have it, we'll be able to report exactly what happened. I know that no death is acceptable. But some of the things that the Sheriff's Department is doing, if you've heard in the papers and our press releases, we have starting in June, mandatory urine samples from everybody. Now, we're not going to use force on people to make them pee in a cup, but we're trying to convince every person that comes in to give us a urine sample. And I would say the great majority of the people that are being arrested are agreeing. What we're trying to do is determine if they have any narcotics on board. And this urine sample is not used for any prosecution purposes. It's strictly to diagnose. It goes to our medical staff to diagnose what narcotics may be in someone's system, so that we can develop a treatment so that the people don't start detoxing and looking for other types of drugs within the system. We give them actually medication ourselves. We let the incarcerated people know that if they come through the system and test and we find narcotics in their system, we will give them narcotics to bring them down and bring them back to a normalcy, or wean them off of whatever it is, hopefully to prevent the DTs. We've also put, as you've heard, naloxone in our modules. In every module that we have 2 packages of naloxone that the incarcerated people can use if they want to grab it before we do. We've had over, I think it was last weekend, not this weekend, but last weekend, we had our, I'm sorry, not the weekend that just passed, but the weekend before, we had our first case of incarcerated people actually grabbing the naloxone, going to a person and administering it to another incarcerated person, and keeping them alive until the deputies could come, continue the treatment, get the paramedics in and get them to the hospital. And they actually saved the life of one of our people. We also found while we were doing that, another person in the same module, we believe obviously overdoses. So both of the lives were saved during that time. I would like to say also that the incarcerated people believe that the naloxone cures everything. They believe it cures COVID, asthma, all kinds of issues. So we've had over 100 doses of naloxone taken from where we put it in the modules and used by the inmates as a, what do you call it? As preventative medicine, hoping that it will help them do something. It's very expensive, but we figure it's worth the cost if it saves actually one life. Also, in terms of giving you an update with the JLAC audit, we have 10 of the 13 recommendations fully implemented. The other 3 deal with medical processes, and starting on July 1st, our contract with the NAFCare Medical Group went active. So NAFCare is now staffing, bringing in people, staffing and training in our staff to provide the medical care. And we believe that within 12 months of them coming in, or next July, we'll have the entire 13 recommendations complete. Also, we're applying for the NCCHC accreditation. It's a National Corrections accreditation. It should be the gold standard in how to run a detention facility. We have 41 of the 59 anchor points complete, and we need NAFCare or our medical people to come up to speed to continue the last 18. And we believe within a year that will also be happening. And then we've created a program we haven't advertised yet, but we've created a wellness program for our incarcerated people, where our counselors, our deputies identify what we believe is the top 10% of people at risk of suicide or narcotics overdose. And we're checking on them twice weekly to see how they're doing, to give them an avenue as with their own people. And we're getting tremendous response back from the people that we're talking to, appreciating the care, the concern. We're hoping to reduce. And as you know, we haven't had well, we went 8 months with no suicides this year. And the medical examiner is trying to determine if our last death was or was not. We don't know for sure, but we may have had our first. I am not sure in that part. We have changed our leadership. For those of you who've been in this commission for a long time, we have new assistant sheriff, new commanders, new protocols and detentions. And one of the things that would help us, I think, tremendously would be being fully staffed. As you know, there's a national hiring staff in every profession. But certainly in law enforcement too. And if we were fully staffed, we could do even more programs that we have right now. But that's a quick down and dirty overview, and I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has.
See, we have Commissioner Garcias and Commissioner Roberts looks like she physically raised their hands. So thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Sheriff Wright. The question on when you mention of natural causes, is that obviously natural causes could still be preventable. They were under medical care, like if they had a heart condition, or what would be your definition of natural causes?
I'm not a medical professional, so I can't give you the technical medical definition that would be used in a court of law. I can tell you that when the medical examiner tells me they died of a heart attack, or they died of cancer, they died of, I think it's what's called thrombosis, when they have clogged arteries, kidney failure, liver failure. When the medical examiner tells us natural causes, we say natural causes. We don't make that determination. That's what they do.
Okay, and does the, were those people that were in custody, were they under medical care at the time? Were they actually going in, if they had things like cancer or heart condition or things like that, that could be considered, um, could be considered that, were they under medical care from the health professionals within the jails?
Some of them were, like the gentleman that was in the hospital for a year, obviously had medical issues. When he came to us, he had a complaint of pain. We had him seen by our doctors inside the jail. They decided he needed to go to the hospital for care. The hospital determined they needed to keep him. And he lived in the hospital under medical care for an entire year, about 12 and a half months before he expired. Some people are in the hospital when they expire under natural causes. Some people come to us with the issues, and within the, I don't have the case in front of me, but it's possible that they could pass away within 1 or 2 days from coming in the front door due to a heart attack or a kidney failure or something that happened. And then the medical examiner would make the decision if it was natural causes there or not. So I would imagine some were diagnosed and under care, and some were undiagnosed because we were not aware of the problem at the time when they came through intake. As you might understand or realize, not everybody tells us the truth when we ask them at intake, do you have any issues? Do you have any problems? Are you seeing a doctor? Whatever's going on. One of the things that we're trying to do to overcome that lack of knowledge is with NAVCare, is NAVCare is going to connect with all the local medical health providers like Kaiser, Sharp, Scripps, and different people, so that when someone comes in, NAVCare can reach out when we identify somebody and see if they do have any medical records or medical conditions or being treated for anything outside of the system, so that we can continue that care. If people let us know ahead of time when they come in, then we'll try to get them on the medication or continue their treatment, whether it's chemo or whether it's kidney dialysis or medication. We want to keep them on there. But if people don't tell us and we don't know, it's difficult to determine that right away until they tell us they have an issue.
And just two final questions. That who's the new, or is there a who's the undersheriff that oversees the jails? And then is NAVCare a software program or a networking system, or is it actual like staff coming in?
You know, I've been interviewed by a lot of people, and you could be on like Fox or KOSI or ABC because you are smooth with the questions. First off, the assistant sheriff, the new assistant sheriff, her name is Teresa Adams Haidar. She's been with the department, I believe, 27, 28 years. And she took over, I believe it was in March on the detention side, and she's running that right now. NAVCare is a medical provider. It's a company. It's not a software company. It's a medical provider. And before NAVCare, we had 20 different medical providers with 20 different contracts providing different types of services. One doctor would provide this service, one doctor this service, one doctor this service. And we thought we needed to coordinate our medical services so that whoever was treating the individuals would be aware of all of the issues individuals had. So we went from one, it's been about a 3-year process to advertise, select, hire, and then bring in. And now we're happy to have them in. So there are all-encompassing medical provider for the people that we have in custody right now.
Okay, thank you.
And Chair Nash, we have Commissioner Roberts, Commissioner Murray Ramirez, Commissioner Naya, hands up, and we also have a member of the public, Darwin Fishman's hand as well. So Commissioner Roberts.
Well, I basically thank you for the summary. I think it's pretty amazing that to me, it seems like you're doing a pretty good high level of care for people. And I don't think there's much you can do about a guy that dies in the hospital after a year. But thank you very much for the report, and I appreciate the thoroughness of the report. Thank you.
If I may, you reminded me, thank you, Commissioner. You reminded me of something. One of the new programs that we haven't started yet, but that Under Sheriff Martinez wants to create, is not only to have basic CPR, first aid trained to our deputies, but she would like to make a number of our deputies working in our detention centers EMTs, licensed EMTs, so they can provide a higher level of care when they come across someone that's down. That hasn't started yet, but that's something we want to put in the works in the very near future. And
absolutely brilliant.
Vice Chair Murray Ramirez. Nicole, can you hear us? See if we can unmute you.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Two questions. How many of the under sheriffs are there any of color?
That was my question.
The undersheriff is not. There's 3 assistant sheriffs. I would say no, all Caucasians. Well, the undersheriffs. I don't know the Kelly Martinez. I would have to ask her how much Latino blood she has inside of her, but I don't know.
No, I think that is by I think that's by marriage. My second question, the drug situation, and of course, I think we've all been reading the Union Tribune investigating reports. But is there a drug problem going on with drugs coming into the jail? And also that I read there that visitors are can touch or stuff. I'm very curious on if some of these drug overdoses are because of drugs coming in, and usually the reports I hear or read concerning prisons, and certainly this is a jail, but that sometimes they come in through the deputies wise or visitors or whatever. Could you give me some more information on that?
Yes, those are 2 very good questions. So yes, we do have drugs coming to the jail. In fact, at our last Public Safety Committee meeting, we did a presentation on how drugs come into jail and what the deputies, what the department is doing about it. If you'd like, we could certainly repeat that presentation for the large group if you'd like to see that. Certainly drugs are coming in. It's a fight that we have. As you well know, the cartels live on the other side of the border. We're on the border. There are 4 major drug corridors from Mexico. I worked in our intelligence also from Mexico and the United States. One is in San Diego, one is through El Centro, one is through Arizona, and one is through Texas. Methamphetamine was created right here in the East County of San Diego, quickly became a staple from the cartels on the other side of the border. And fentanyl, which is made in China, was created in China, but the drug cartels or the major drug trafficking organizations have cloned a portion that recipe, and it's made on the other side of the border now. And if you've been watching the news in the last couple of weeks, you'll find out that major seizures are made right here of fentanyl coming through the border. And what's never mentioned is that the sheriff's department are generally making the stops or whatever, but we work with task forces. So we've been a part of those seizures, and we have narcotics going into our jails, and we're fighting narcotics coming into our jails. And there's been I've had a lot of questions the last 2 weeks about why don't we check our staff? Why don't we check like the prisons do and their staff? And what we do is we're a data-based, evidence-based organization. We're trying to be smarter and work harder and smarter. And we have absolutely no intelligence or evidence of drugs come in. We've had several complaints over the last 5 years. We certainly investigate them. We have no proof that our people are bringing drugs. It doesn't mean that they're not, but we have no proof or evidence. What we do know is that the majority of our narcotics come into our jails either through the mail, which we can generally interdict, and through people putting it into their body cavities, which is more difficult to interdict. And we use scanners and x-ray machines, admissions, signs, information to try to isolate those people when they do until they actually pass or remove the narcotics. But that is the major way that it's coming on in right now. And if you hear our presentation, we would show you things that we confiscate and how it comes in and what we're doing to stop that. We have talked about scanning our people. Like right now, people can walk past our drug sniffing dogs and the dogs will hit on our employees if the dogs are where the people are right now. We would like to, in the future, set up a protocol where we could stop all of our people before they come in and stop our people when they were coming out. But right now we have limited resources, and we know drugs are coming in through body cavities. So that's where we're trying to work on the people that are coming in. We also know that when people have visits, professional visits, whether they're attorneys or they're at court, where they mix with other people that are in or out waiting for court, oftentimes narcotics we pass. So we're searching our people when they come back from the courts, and we have to be cognizant of the people that are coming to visit, also the incarcerated people that are inside there. So we haven't got that far yet. It's certainly a discussion we're having, but right now our resources are focused on where we know the drugs are coming, but it doesn't mean that we are. We thought if we were to do something like this, we would probably hire an outside entity, not someone within the sheriff's department, but a third party to come in and be the checkers of the people, either the sniffing, the checking, the x-raying, what's going on. We've talked about doing the, what do you call it, making it simple, maybe a phased-in approach, instead of having bring in backpacks, satchels, cases, to bring the see-through. So we can, as they're walking through, we can just see what's inside someone's purse or backpack, whatever's going on. We think that's going to be something we do in the future, but right now we're focused on where we know the drugs are coming in. And I think we've in the public safety group presentation that we made, we played a soundbite where somebody inside the jail was talking to someone outside the jail who was working very hard to get arrested so they could bring drugs inside the jail. But I hope that answered your question.
Right, we have Commissioner Aya.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning still. Good morning, Sheriff. I guess I have a question regarding, these deaths or medical incidents. Actually, a couple questions and a comment here for you to ponder on and give me a response to. When it comes to the incidents and the deaths, is there a difference between those that happen between intake or in general population? Are we seeing like more, a larger number on either side of that? And then the comment, I guess my comment or kind of a question related on the intake side of it, because I know there's several steps to intake on the medical side. When you get into the garage, you get that first intake. Then later on, you sit down with a nurse behind glass and get another as part of your intake. And you potentially could have a medical clearance even before you get in the garage and all that. I know there's all those steps that happen to evaluate a person's ability, medical condition. However, I know that you mentioned you're understaffed, and I worry about like weekends, late evening graveyard shifts. Is there a disparity in those times as well? Like later in the evenings or on a holiday weekend with lower staff, is there an increase in incidents? And then and because of that lower staffing as well, I mean, I've noticed or I've seen, your holding cells on intake are usually really crowded to the degree where even toilets are plugged up and are not even fixed, and there's feces everywhere. How can we fix that? And is there a disparity, on those weekends with that intake process?
So you asked a number of questions. I know that we're crowded. I've not heard that we have all of our toilets are plugged up with feces everywhere. I'd like to, as soon as that happens, we should know right on the bat so we can get that cleaned up. We are understaffed as a department, but we're fully staffed in terms of staffing our through overtime. But we have people that are getting tired of working 2 and 3 and 4 days of overtime every single pay period. Some people working straight through 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 days in a row to make sure that we're there. In terms of your question with the intake, one of the majority of these in custody deaths start, the people that die in the hospital die in the hospital. One of the people died, we identified one person in intake. They were in our custody for less than 11 hours. They were arrested, went to Vista, were there, they were transported to Las Colinas. In the intake process at Las Colinas, we discovered they had some medical issues and we took them to the hospital. They died after that 4 days later in that area. The majority of people that we find that did not pass in the hospital are in the general population. Whether it's natural causes or they got a hold of some fentanyl or methamphetamine or whatever it was. The majority would be in general population, to answer your question, and not at intake. But at intake, we have turned some people around, sent them right off to the hospital where they've expired in that area.
Thank you. At some time in the future, I would love to chat with you about some of the things that I've witnessed, but we can talk about that offline.
I would welcome that time. I will say though, after today, I'm leaving town I'll be back a week from Friday. 2 conferences I'm going to, and then my wife and I are going to celebrate our anniversary. But happy to get together after that.
All right, and now we have 2 members of the public, if you want to allow them to speak 2 minutes. Chair Nash.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, we have
Thank you.
Darwin Fishman and Yusuf Miller. Start with Darwin Fishman.
All right, good morning. Thank you. Darwin Fishman, Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego, North County Equity and Justice Coalition, he, him, his. And I've been part of the SLICK campaign, Saving Lives in Custody. We've been working on this for about 2 years now. So I did want to add to this discussion. First, what's most important, which you won't hear and you don't have an appreciation, which is the San Diego jails are completely out of control. The death rates are extraordinary. They're some of the worst in the country. We are now leading Rikers Island for the amount of deaths. We're at 16. They're only at 12. Rikers Island is historically been considered the worst prison for conditions and deaths. That's how bad San Diego is. The statewide audit, where the Sheriff's Department and CLRB were slammed, got national coverage. The UT just came out the other day slamming the Sheriff's Department and asking the supervisors to do more. The supervisor just voted last week on another measure trying to put pressure on the sheriffs to do more about the jails, including having the dogs sniffing staff because the Sheriff's Department refused to do that. There's a class action lawsuit from people in San Francisco and on the ground here with the ACLU and us supporting it. For a civil lawsuit for the families that have lost loved ones. Even CLRB, the civilian oversight of law enforcement, was slammed in the state auditor's report. One of the key members of CLRB, the only medical professional, Buki Domingos, was removed. That really helped Sheriff Ray. No medical professional on CLRB, you can't have an assessment of how people are dying on that level. It goes on and on. This is why we've been having this struggle. I'm glad to see the HRC take this up. It's not an unrealistic expectation to have the death rate to go down and to only be something like 1 or 2 a month. Having this, the record number of 5 that we just had in July and this overall yearly rate, it's disgusting. It should be something that everyone in San Diego is embarrassed by and that we are all demanding more from. The answers that are given by Sheriff Ray are completely insufficient. And the concern is if we accept those answers, we can have this death rate and it can even get worse. So I appreciate HRC taking this up. I'd be really curious to see what you guys do and how you help to resolve this problem for San Diego. Thank you.
All right, and we have Yusuf Miller.
Hello, hello everyone. Yusuf Miller, North County Equity and Justice Coalition and Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego. And also, I'd like to echo Dr. Darwin Fishman and make sure that we understand that the natural deaths need to be broken out. Excuse me. The natural deaths need to be broken out into more understandable pieces. It's a clump of variety of deaths that are called natural deaths that we wouldn't consider natural deaths if someone is neglected, let's say, and they pass from a natural death because of this neglect. Then that needs to be recorded and broken out in the death rate. Also, I want to say thank you and congratulations for the lives that are saved. We represent family members who have lost lives, but also the lives have saved with the naloxone in the jails. A great idea. It was unfortunate to hear that some of them are using it for conspiracy theories, but at least if we can save one life, I appreciate that. And lastly, Sheriff Ray, are you going to speak about the CLRB meeting this evening, the special meeting with the announcement that's coming from your office? I think that would be a good thing to announce today. Thank you.
Okay, may I?
Yeah, feel free, sir.
Yes, go ahead.
As always, thank you, Yusuf. You ask very hard questions, but I always appreciate you giving credit to the deputies who save a life. I'm not going to be at the CLRB meeting tonight as I'm flying out. I'll be traveling, and you have me at a disadvantage. I'm not sure what it is that we're announcing. I know that CLRB is going to be presenting their annual report to the Board of Supervisors next Tuesday, a week from today. I'm at a loss on what it is that the Sheriff's Department's announcing tonight. At the CLRB meeting, as this is a special CLRB meeting that I won't be able to attend. I think it's time again. I appreciate the comments from Dr. Fishman. Let's get in the room again together and discuss this. Obviously, we have disagreements on certain things that are happening, but I think we can find some common ground. So when I come back, I'll get a hold of Yusuf and maybe your coalition, and I can get together with my team, and we can discuss again the things that you're looking at.
Any other questions?
I do see Dave Myers just raised his hand if you would like to allow him to speak, member of the public.
Sure. Dave?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Good morning, Tony, and congratulations on your anniversary, your celebration that's coming up. You know, I will take, you know, you and I have worked many, many years in the jail, and during those times, there have been documented incidents of staff that do bring contraband into the county jail system. Not necessarily deputies, but professional staff. There's a lot of people in and out of the jails, and singling out attorneys for bringing drugs in and singling out that the only way drugs are getting into custody settings is via inmates that are booked in, I think is a very limiting mindset that is very dangerous. If you know who is bringing in, and you've done presentations that say that they're coming in through visits, then I would think you'd be able to stop that influx of drugs into custody settings, but it's not, it's actually getting worse. And also let's acknowledge the fact that there are other inmates, the latest case, that use naloxone to save the life of another inmate besides the deputies. And I would strongly encourage you to use the data of those who are saved by naloxone to offer some sort of immunity or understanding and debrief them on how the drugs got into jail and release that information publicly. That is very, very critical to understanding the dynamics of going on, and don't limit your thinking to that it's not staff. And please adopt the recommendations of CLRB that staff should be searched, not physically, but going through scanners, drug dogs in the locker rooms to ensure the safety of everybody in custody. No deputy wants to show up to work, start their shift with an overdose death in custody. No deputy sheriff wants to do that. And you need to, as the sheriff, expand and not be afraid to take on the hard issues right now, because it's only getting worse. Thanks, Tony.
May I?
Oh, feel free.
Thanks, Dave. Many great memories working with you, and I appreciate the comments. I'll take them to heart.
And I see
Thank
more
you.
hands, Chair Nash.
More hands? No hands? Okay, great. This has been a great discussion. I appreciate the Board of Supervisors taking up the issue, I think at their last meeting, and attempting, I guess, to fix the screening process that a lot of you all have raised. We have screening processes going when we go through the airport, almost down to no clothes on. I don't understand why scanning, screening is something that's a challenge. Because when you say deaths by overdose, that just gives a community member that it's drugs in their system, and how did the drugs get into the system? So that's the issue. We do have the highest death rate here in San Diego. So and it keeps one death after another keeps coming up in the papers. That's why I thought it was important to bring this to the full body. We have a great public safety committee that is also addressing this issue, but I thought it was important that the full commission hear what's going on, because we're all representing, excuse me, different communities that have these worries and concerns. My question is as a subject matter expert, Sheriff Ray, what are best practices that you're looking at or employing that would reduce the in custody deaths here in San Diego?
Well, I think thank you for the question. And I'm going to answer the best practices question last. I want to address the board. So we were in the process as a department of buying 8 of the scanners, and the board action by Nathan Fletcher, we appreciate. That's cutting all the red tape, making it possible for us to purchase these new and improved scanners much better. We have scanners and x-ray machines right now, but they're older technology. The scanners that we're going to purchase now show a much cleaner picture, so that we can tell if there's a foreign object inside someone's body, and not just maybe consider, is that a bone, is that or not, because of the older technology that we had. So that board action is supporting something we were already in the process of doing. It really cuts the red tape. We're going to have these scanners much sooner than we thought we were going to have, which is a good thing. But I'd also like to say that our overdose deaths in jail reflect the community. I mean, if you listen to the reports, whether you listen to the district attorney, the U.S. attorney, or the newspapers, the overdose deaths in the last 5 years in our county outside the jails is up 2,300%. in the community. And it's much lower than that in the jails. They're still going up in the jails, and we want to fight that. We're doing something about it. But what's happening inside the jails is happening outside the community. And it's not just a death problem inside the jails. It's a death problem outside the community, where kids, young adults, older adults are buying something that they think is a regular narcotic, but it's a narcotic laced with fentanyl. It's a fake other pill. So we have an issue with drugs in the entire county of San Diego we have to fight. And part of it is in the jails. But as our numbers are going up, they're going up even faster on the outside of the jails. I'm not saying that justifies what's happening on the inside. I'm saying that that's a piece of the county that we have, and that's in there. In terms of best practices, the scanner, of course, is going to be good. I believe that adding mental health clinicians right at the intake, where before we just did a medical screening, but a mental screening, has helped us evaluate a number of people and classify them and treated them before they go into the mainline population. I believe that the urine screening that we're doing, which is allowing us to identify people that have narcotics in their system, and then we can treat them as they go into our custody, so that they don't look for fentanyl or methamphetamine or something else to come on down as they're detoxing, will also help in there. And then, of course, we've changed our security checks to every check as a proof of life check. So we're not just walking by, we're trying to make sure that everyone is alive and doing a good job. We're trying to get responses of our people. So we want to make sure that we're in there. We're also speeding up our checks. I mean, we have the rules. You have to check every 30 to 60 minutes in certain areas, but we want to make sure that we're in there over and over and over again, talking to people. And then our wellness program that we started, where we're actually talking to the people that we believe are at risk of suicide, at risk of using narcotics, to talk to them to find out what their problem is and connect them with counselors or medical professionals that can help them, will also help. I appreciate oversight. The fact that there's a light shining on this right now allows us to get the resources that we need to employ. And like I say before, we're understaffed, but every shift is fully staffed. It's just our people are tired. They're working overtime. If we could be fully staffed, we would have fresher people all the time. I don't think that's causing poor service, but it would be nice to, I believe in reentry. And we don't have all of our reentry programs up right now. So when people leave our custody, we try to set them up for success, whether it's in the culinary arts program, the mechanics program, the construction program, the reading program, the education program. I believe in education, not incarceration. I think it's a wonderful program. But when people leave our custody, they need wraparound services where people can help them. We're working with the Urban League and some other groups to provide those services, but we need more people to do that. And we're providing the basic services right now as deputies. But if we could provide more of those reentry stats, maybe less people would come back into our custody. And that would reduce the population. And in that sense, reduce population, reduce deaths in that area. We could have a whole meeting on best practices if you'd like to, but I've got to leave in about 13 minutes to get to the airport. But I'll stay, I'll answer, keep going.
Any other questions?
Chair Nash, we have Commissioner Naya and Commissioner Perez.
I may have missed this number as I was driving, but did we have a breakdown of the demographics of the deaths that have happened over the last year?
I did not provide that today, and I didn't bring that, but I can find it for you if you'd like.
Yeah, I think that's important for us to know, what these numbers look like and what communities are being impacted the most. So if that could come back to us, I'd be really interested to see those numbers, maybe even beyond just the last year, so that we can identify any trends, maybe the last few years.
Right.
Well, I think I will do that for you, all the information we have. I believe that CLERP created a report. They hired a group called Analytica who did break down that information. What I recall them saying was that Black people are more likely to be incarcerated, white people are more likely to die in custody. I look at it as just people. When I look at someone that dies, I never ask what race were they, what color were they, what gender were they. It's someone that died. And I try to work on the why they died. What was the causes? Could we have done something better? What happened in there?
Well,
I will certainly get the information.
Respectfully, although you may not ask that question, that is a very critical question in our communities that we always need to be on top of.
I'll get you the information. I'm just telling you my perspective. My perspective is I'm trying to focus on the death of a person, but I'll get you all the information you asked for. And I'll send it to you, Ms. Nash.
Thank you. That was, I echo Commissioner Naya's question. That was actually my question, is my last question, that the demographics information is very important to our communities. Any other?
And I don't.
Commissioner Perez, and then Commissioner Evans. I'm sorry, Cheryl, did you have something?
I say Ms. Perez has had her hand up a long time.
Good morning. I just wanted to say thank you, Sheriff, for that presentation. I think and for everyone's comments, really good comments, and you're right. I think we can talk about this a lot. I think the question on the demographics is really important, and that's actually what I was going to mention. So the only other thing I would say is that I think it'd be good education for this this commission to see that that training, that presentation that you said you had on the types of how these drugs are getting into the system. I think education never hurts anyone, and I think it'd be a good thing to put something on one of our maybe on our next agenda to see this presentation. Even if it's a condensed version, at least it gives us some education of what what exactly we're all talking about. But again, thank you for the comments. Good report.
See Commissioner Evans and Commissioner De Los Rios.
I too am in agreement and echo what everyone is saying regarding demographics. If you've mentioned the Urban League, which for all of us is a red flag in terms of how you are approaching the community and what you're saying to the organizations in the community. And I think it's imperative that we know not only who's dying as well as who is being arrested. And the statement about, I don't know, it's a little bit cavalier in my mind for you to say that, yes, we know Blacks get arrested more, but to say the whites die more. I kind of disagree with that. Statistically, that would be not viable from my perspective. So I think I would like to know just the demographics of people who are being arrested, where they self-identify, and secondly, the demographics of the people who are dying in jail. Thank you so much. And I appreciate your presentation.
All right, thank you. I'll get the demographics of the people when they're arrested and the demographics when they die. I apologize if I sounded cavalier. I was trying to merely repeat the findings of the Analytica Group's report. That was the finding that they made, and not a.
Well, when you say you use the statement I personally, I don't care, whatever it was. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner De Los Rios.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I just wanted to add that as the Public Safety Committee chair, we've had ongoing conversations in regards to, the jails, and Sheriff Ray has come in and given maybe like 3 presentations. So I do encourage for him to bring the presentations and the questions to the larger group. But I'm just letting everyone know, we have been meeting ongoing as all the committees have. And I've requested at our next meeting, we do a synopsis of what are the priorities in public safety. And I believe this is the top one that everyone's concerned with. And we will bring forth, a summary of what we've met so far and how Sheriff Ray has assisted us with those reports. But I agree, yeah, it would be good to capture more data. Anyway, thank you very much. I just wanted to add that.
I'm not seeing any more hands, Chair Nash.
Thank you, Sheriff Ray, for this great presentation. We are hopeful. I'm sure I could say on behalf of this entire commission, we are hopeful that there will be a reduction in custody deaths, and we would love for you to come back and let us know when the reduction occurs in the in custody deaths, because this is, as Dr. Fishman said, this is an embarrassment to San Diego with these high numbers. We are supposed to be America's finest, not just city, but county. And this kind of data is totally embarrassing. I have community members, we have community members that sit around the dinner table or around discussions around concerns around in custody deaths. So we are anxious for you to report back to us as sooner than later that there has been a reduction in custody deaths. Happy anniversary. And we hope that you have a safe and productive trip and also enjoy your anniversary. Thank you so much for your presentation this morning.
Thank you all very much for your time. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Have a nice trip.
We will now proceed with our topic agenda item 7, monkeypox response and education.
And from Public Health Services today, we have Dr. Cameron Kaiser, and he is sharing the screen right now, so I will turn it over to him.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Cameron Kaiser. I'm one of the Deputy Public Health Officers for the county. We're honored to be invited to speak on this important public health issue by the Commission, and I'm hopeful that this update will be informative. Before we begin, I think it's useful to discuss a little bit about the clinical aspects of monkeypox before we go into talking about the epidemiology and what we're trying to do to respond to it. Monkeypox is a zoonotic infection, which is to say that it can involve animals as well as humans. In fact, the name monkeypox may be a misnomer. And the California Department of Public Health has started to use the term Mpox as well, which you'll notice I'll use mostly synonymously in this presentation. And the World Health Organization has also indicated they wish to consider renaming the virus to more accurately depict how it spreads in a population. While it certainly can infect simian species, we actually see it more often in rodents and small mammals. America has had outbreaks of monkeypox before. In 2003, there was one in the Midwest, which was ultimately traced back to prairie dogs. And other small rodents can also carry it, which is a concern, particularly in those areas which may have large pest infestations. Ordinarily, Mpox is endemic in West and Central Africa, and it's uncommon elsewhere, but it certainly can be in other places, and we'll discuss that epidemiology a little bit later. And it is caused by a specific virus unique to it, which is the monkeypox virus and is part of the orthopox virus family. Orthopox viruses are very special to us in public health because one of the diseases that's been wiped off the face of the earth is also an orthopox virus, and that's smallpox. Smallpox, however, is substantially more dangerous than monkeypox. It's not to say that monkeypox does not pose the threat. Again, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But smallpox is substantially more lethal, up to 35% in some cases. And the idea with monkeypox is that some of the same control measures which we use for smallpox can also apply to Mpox. We'll discuss that a bit more when we get to talking about the vaccine. As I mentioned, because it is a zoonotic infection, it can spread from infected animals to humans, and it can also spread person to person. Those person-to-person transmission is primarily skin-to-skin contact with rashes, sores, and scabs, but there is also increasing evidence that monkeypox can be detected in other fluids, including body fluids and mucosal lesions. A person with Mpox is potentially communicable until their symptoms have disappeared and until their skin lesions have completely healed and new skin had formed, which may take as long as 2 to 4 weeks. Other transmission modes are possible, such as large droplet secretions during close face-to-face contact, or sometimes through contaminated objects, most notably clothing and shared towels. But these are believed to be relatively minor, especially as we're getting more information about how monkeypox spreads in more developed countries. Those last two mechanisms, although they are possible, are less common than the first. When we talk about the symptoms that people have, we're obviously very well aware of the rash and the lesions which they might have, but there are other symptoms which may precede it, sometimes by several days. This includes fever, swollen lymph nodes, chills, headache, backache, muscle aches, pretty much whatever you would expect if you happen to be sick. It is harder to transmit than other infections like COVID-19, although of course Omicron has become so incredibly transmissible that that's a particularly high bar really for any virus to reach. That being said, though, the risk to the general population is believed to be low. But precautions should still be taken, especially for children, pregnant persons, and immunocompromised individuals who may be uniquely susceptible to its effects. The incubation period for monkeypox ranges from 5 to 21 days, but typically takes about 1 to 2 weeks to occur. Recently, the World Health Organization, when it noted that the spread of it was occurring, particularly in Europe and then moving to North America, declared the multi-country outbreak of monkeypox to be a public health emergency of international concern. This is the WHO's highest level of alert. Subsequently to that, Governor Newsom declared a state of emergency within California to monkeypox, and the County of San Diego declared a local health emergency under Dr. Wilma Wooten's authority as a public health officer, followed by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, which declared the ongoing spread a public health emergency in the United States. Many of the local jurisdictions in Southern California have also made similar declarations, including Riverside and Los Angeles counties. Worldwide, and I'll make a note of caution about these statistics, they are changing all the time. Numbers may reflect different reporting intervals. I'm giving you what I've got as of 1 hour ago, keeping in mind that when you go and look at those sites, you may notice something completely different when you're there. As of my most recent update that I had available to me, there are 41,358 cases of Mpox in about 94 countries. The majority of them have not historically reported monkeypox before. You will note, though, the countries within Western and Central Africa, which are more typical to have it, have relatively small numbers, although testing is, of course, much more difficult to come by in certain portions of those countries. You'll also notice that particularly Spain and certain areas of Europe are punching way above their weight. The numbers which you're seeing here are not normalized for population, so it is not surprising the U.S. has a large number of cases because we have a large number of population. But if you look at smaller population countries within Europe, particularly Western Europe, you'll see some very large dots there in countries with populations a fifth or a quarter the size of the United States. In the US itself, we have 15,433 total cases, with 2,633 of them in California. Again, this map is not normalized for population, so those states that have greater amounts of population will consequently have greater numbers of cases. However, when you look at cases per 100,000, New York has particularly punching above its weight, but so is California in general. Looking at our local jurisdictions within California, Los Angeles has the greatest number of cases at 936. San Francisco is number 2 at 614. San Diego is number 3. I'll talk about our epidemiology more specifically in a moment. As far as our surrounding neighbors, Riverside has 115 cases and Orange has 83. There is a disconnect between these two tables because I want to, especially because I know this will be of interest to the commission, to talk about equity and how monkeypox is affecting specific populations more than others. Our total number of cases as of the 21st is 226, and these numbers come directly off of our Department of Public Health monkeypox webpage, which I'll talk about and give you a link to briefly at the end. Obviously, it is impossible for us to get demographics right at the time a case is reported to us. So you notice that in my demographics table, I'm only reporting a total of 209. That's because we only have information on 209 of them at this moment, and we are looking to make up the remainder. We've had a total of 5 hospitalizations, fortunately no deaths. Within the 209 for which we currently have demographic information on, 100% of the ones that have reported in are male. We do not have gender information for 4 of those people. Sexual orientation, you'll note that we've put gay and lesbian together in the same population. That's because the state is reporting it that way. We're trying to report it the same way for information purposes. You can obviously extrapolate that from the gender breakdown. 86.7% of our cases are reported to be gay, lesbian, or same gender loving. 6.7% are reported as bisexual. 5.6% are reported as heterosexual or straight, and 1.1% declined to answer, with 29 unable to contact or unknown. The median age is 34, the minimum age is 20, and the maximum age is 64. San Diego County does not have any pediatric cases, although pediatric cases have been reported in other jurisdictions. Within that group, 49.4% of those for which we have race or ethnicity data are reported as white, 40.9% reported Hispanic or Latino, and 9.7% reported as Black or African American. Please note that these numbers are also not normalized for their number within the population. Unfortunately, we do not yet have race or ethnicity information for 23 individuals. Those stars there are too small to report. The reason why we're not giving those numbers out is because obviously for figures where we have a number of cases below a specific threshold, it may make those people more personally identifiable, so I will not identify them publicly. We have found a total of 5 cases within our persons experiencing homelessness population as of the 20th, and we are, of course, working very closely with our sectors serving those populations to ensure we don't have outbreaks in that population as well. The most important means of controlling monkeypox, of course, is prevention and then treatment. The two major modalities are tecovirimat, which is an experimental medication under what's called an investigational new drug authorization by the CDC, and then also the Jynneos vaccine, I'm sorry, which is a smallpox and monkeypox vaccine. Although there is a second vaccine called ACAM 2000, which I'm sure none of us are old enough to remember, but nevertheless, if you are one of those people who happen to have a smallpox vaccine, as yours truly also does, and I see a couple people pointing to their scar already, you'll remember the 2 times it was received there. I certainly got mine when I was a kid, and my dad was in the Air Force and we were deployed overseas. And I'm probably one of the last generation to actually have received one. We aren't using that anymore for this purpose. The Jynneos vaccine is much more straightforward to administer. Because the vaccine is so limited, there is basically one company that produces it, and they produce it in relatively small quantities, because up until now, it wasn't in high demand. We are trying to restrict this to the populations where we believe there is a greatest amount of risk. Obviously, the greatest amount of risk is sustained by those people who had direct contact to a case of monkeypox, because they are the ones most likely to get it from them. As I mentioned, even though Mpox is not a highly transmissible virus, it is certainly a transmissible virus. And if they receive vaccination within 4 days of exposure, that may be sufficient to prevent them from developing the disease at all. Even up to 14 days after, it may still diminish their symptoms. Unfortunately, if they happen to develop monkeypox, they are no longer a candidate for vaccination, so we want to jump on those things quickly. There is also a role for pre-exposure prophylaxis as well. We want to call this group PEP++ also. And this primarily falls for the category of people who are gay, bisexual, and other men, including cisgender and transgender men, who have sex with men or transgender women who meet at least one of the following criteria, and I've listed them out on your screen. I won't belabor the point by reading them here. But the idea is that these folks may be at higher risk. We're trying to maintain a sex-positive message, but we also need to make sure that people are aware of what risk factors may put them at greater possibility of transmission. And I'll talk briefly about stigma when we get to the end of the presentation as well, because that's the message I particularly want to leave this commission with. There's also an additional priority group for gay, bisexual, and other men who have sex with men who do not meet those criteria above, but may have certain other criteria as well. These are the recommendations which we are also making to our partner agencies that we are distributing vaccine to, so that way people are able to access them in the same way, no matter where they happen to go to receive a vaccination. Because the amount of vaccine is so limited, the amount of doses that we've asked for, you can see that we've asked for about 31,000 doses. We've received about 5,000. That's about a sixth of what we've requested. There is just not enough vaccine. And as I mentioned, there are many reasons for this, but we are struggling with many other jurisdictions who also want to get in line for this as well. Many people have brought up, well, Los Angeles seems to have greater vaccine availability in San Diego County, and there's actually an excellent reason for that. LA directly gets their vaccines from the feds. They are one of the few jurisdictions that do. San Francisco does not, we do not. None of the other jurisdictions in California receive that allocation. We must receive it from the state. The state has a formula which they are constantly fine-tuning to try and get vaccine where it is needed. This is primarily based on number of cases in that jurisdiction, and then also using the number of syphilis cases as an early warning indicator. This is an imperfect formula. The state is perfectly open about that, and they're also trying to make sure that they adjust this for utilization as well, such that those jurisdictions which are not sitting on doses are not penalized for getting them out to people quickly also. Nevertheless, this is the situation where we're at. As of what I grabbed this morning, we have requested 31,588 doses. We've received 5,047. We have allocated or distributed 4,811. Of those, 3,520 have been administered. That includes those doses which we have sent out to our healthcare partners. That number is lower than the first, partially because number one, they may not have given it out yet, but number two, there was always a reporting delay in getting those doses entered into the statewide immunization system, which we use to track them. And we've also kept a total of 236 doses in county custody for post-exposure prophylaxis for those people exposed to a documented case. They are in the highest risk category, and the county wants to respond to those people specifically. On our dashboard, you can see that, again, the numbers always reflect when these numbers happen to be sampled. We are also making sure that we do contact tracing. Contact tracing became a dirty word during COVID-19, and I don't understand why, because because contact tracing is the bread and butter of public health. If you have a exposure to a particular communicable disease, then you want to make sure that you respond to it quickly by finding other people who may have been exposed to it as well. My background in public health is through tuberculosis control, and contact tracing is exactly what we do when we get a case of TB in a school or in a workplace. Same thing applies to STIs, same thing applies here. We've opened 26 new contact incidents in the last 7 days, with 255 cumulative contact incidents in which a public health staff member has tried to follow up with those people and get folks who have been identified at risk in for expeditious treatment or vaccination. We've also distributed 271 tecovirimat courses. That is a full treatment course. That's not just pills. As of that date, again, tecovirimat is also in very short supply because it is not a generally approved medication. It is what's called an investigational new drug, but we do have doses of it positioned in our major medical facilities, which means should somebody be admitted to the hospital, and we've had a few of those who require treatment with tecovirimat, they can get it. However, where most of the interest exists is, of course, in our vaccine appointments. And starting Monday, vaccine appointments are available for high-risk clients interested in receiving monkeypox vaccine at the county public health clinics. You can schedule this through the statewide My Turn system. I know we're doing this because yours truly gets to be the clinical backup when there happens to be an issue during one of those clinics. And we're trying to make those hours as convenient for the community as possible. Because the vaccine supply is so constricted, we are trying to move towards what's called intradermal injection. And this is a little bit different than the way that you might have gotten it before. In fact, it's actually more similar to the way we used to administer smallpox vaccination back in the day. Previously, for the doses up until this point with Jynneos, we did subcutaneous, which was what you would expect to be as a typical vaccine. Most folks' vaccines are usually intramuscular, but from your perspective as a patient, you would probably see them administered in much the same way. An intradermal injection, on the other hand, is done more like, again, I'm a TB guy, so I'll pull from my clinical history. It's more like a TB skin test. And if you've had one of those before, you're experienced with how they sort of inject the needle slightly under the skin to develop a wheal in that area, and then that's how it is administered. Jynneos is a relatively recent vaccine, but it seems to be a fairly good one. No vaccine is 100% perfect, but it seems to work fairly well. And for the data which we have for intradermal injection, it seems to have similar efficacy as well to subcutaneous. Now, we're also partially building the plane while we're flying it, so we expect to get more experience with this later. But we also want to make sure that people are as protected as we can make them. And getting as many people vaccinated as possible is the most important way of making that happen. Second doses are being deferred until we have enough to do so. If your second dose is greater than the 28-day interval between the two typical doses, that in no way invalidates your previous vaccine. And even though the ideal and preferred interval is that 28-day period, the CDC recognizes no maximum interval between the two, and the second dose being delayed does not require you to get your first dose over again. Vaccine supply is limited. Please do not walk up. Vaccine appointments are required to make sure that we have enough for all the people who have signed up for that day. We are aware that there is an equity issue with making sure that people are getting signed up to it, which is why we're trying to do as much outreach to the population as possible. We have a text message alert system. I'll give you that number out at the end. These are daily Monday to Friday to let people know when they're there. So that way people can't just leverage connections and hoover up the appointments. We don't want that to happen in this population. We know that there's lots of folks who are not able to access them before and want to make sure those people get a crack at it too. Monkeypox flyers are being handed out at local libraries. The San Diego Public Library also has the webpage available for people who access the internet through there. We're also working with the organizers of South Bay Pride on August 27th to make sure that we have a presence and can administer it to the amount that we have vaccine available at that event. We also want people to be aware of our county website. This has a large amount of information and sector briefings for those of you involved in different areas such as businesses, childcare, community and faith-based groups, health professionals, long-term care facilities, military, veterans. So we're leveraging the same sector guidance that we used for COVID-19 with this population as well. Because even though it is disproportionately affecting one population, it can certainly affect others. Again, something I'm going to reiterate when we talk about stigma. And we also have video telebriefings available. We try to keep our website updated in a user-friendly format, which you can consume on your mobile device or on your desktop computer. And if you happen to be with an organization that may benefit from a monkeypox presentation, we do have a Live Well San Diego Speakers Bureau. Yours truly is part of it, as well as others, which can make a monkeypox presentation for your particular group as well, time, of course, and availability permitting. We are also running multiple town halls to make sure that our healthcare sector is well informed, because this will be people's most important point of call if they happen to have had exposure, or they may have a rash that they suspect happens to be monkeypox. And we have unfortunately heard of incidents where clinicians have declined to treat patients, saying that they don't know how to do it, or sometimes have turned them away. Fortunately, these appear to be rare, but every single one of them we consider to be a sentinel event. And that's why, partnering with HHSA's Medical Care Services branch, we are running regular telebriefings. We have one this evening, in fact. For healthcare workers, we have one at 6 o'clock tonight, in which our medical director of epidemiology and immunization services will be there, as well as her assistant, the medical director of our HIV, STD, and hepatitis branch, and the deputy chief medical officer of the Medical Care Services branch. And yours truly will also be there, sort of to make sure that nobody gets out of hand. We do have a Zoom link, so you're welcome to join remotely. You can call in as well. And for those of you in the medical field who want to make sure that you're up to date on how best you can serve your own clients, we strongly advise you to attend. Now, what are we telling the community? Because there is so little vaccine available, harm reduction is still going to be important. We have taken, and I think unfairly, some hits from folks saying, well, you don't tell straight people not to have sex. And you know, I'm going to push back on that a little bit, because if you've been involved in any kind of STI messaging, well, we are telling people to be cautious about that, to involve with safer sex practices. And we want people to be aware of this no matter what STI happens to be involved, even though monkeypox is not exclusively one. We want people to limit their close-to-close contact with anyone who has symptoms or a rash. You know, that rash could even be syphilis for that matter. Know the signs and symptoms. Check yourself and ask your partner about recent rashes and illness, and obtain the monkeypox vaccine if you happen to be at risk. Is this working? Yes, actually. If you look at areas such as New York City, which has taken a substantial hit in terms of cases, we are actually starting to see new case rates fall in that area. Because of people in the community who are saying, you know what, we also need to be careful about this. No, it's not your fault that you got monkeypox, but there are simple things that we can do to help protect ourselves as long as while we are waiting for additional vaccine to become available. And we also want people, if they are sick, to isolate, to stay home and monitor their symptoms, to make sure that they contact their healthcare provider to get tested if they do happen to have a rash. There has been question initially during the outbreak about testing availability. Most of those issues have been resolved. There are now multiple commercial labs which can do monkeypox testing. It is not just something that you get through the health department. The health department still does do that testing, but your clinician does not require health department approval to send a test in to one of the commercial labs if there is a concern about it. Treatment, again, as I mentioned, we are distributing that to our healthcare systems, and they have mechanisms in place for getting TPOXX to you if you happen to require it. And of course, as I mentioned, close contact tracing is necessary as well. We are partnered with www.tellyourpartner.org for anonymous partner notification. We're also making sure we're getting this out to major sites such as Grindr, Hornet, and others where people may be receiving this information through non-traditional means. Likewise, if you've been exposed, get vaccinated. Again, our priority is to make sure that people who have been exposed to a documented known case have the highest priority for obtaining vaccine, and that's why we're holding those doses to make sure those people can get them. Monitor for signs and symptoms of 21 days. If you're symptom-free, you can continue your daily routine activities. If you happen to be working in a high-risk setting, there are certain specific restrictions which apply to you. I'm not going to discuss those in great detail here. But the State Department of Public Health does have a list of them, and we're of course trying to get that information out as well. And as symptoms develop, immediately isolate, contact your healthcare provider, and inform close contacts. You don't necessarily need to be holed up at home for the entire time where you are ill. If you're able to cover your lesions, this may help. Again, we can talk about that a little bit more, but the idea being is that because it is not anywhere near as communicable as COVID-19, we have a little bit more wiggle room with this. And this can enable people to not be as badly affected by the impacts of isolation, because again, drawing on my experience in TB control, if somebody's bottled up at home for 6 weeks, that's an impact on their family, that's an impact on their job, and it's an impact on their livelihood. And fortunately, we do have some abilities to make sure that these people are not putting anybody else at risk inadvertently, but are also not being adversely impacted by any isolation requirements that may be placed on them. Last but not least, I want to make sure that we say something specific about stigma. As you've noticed from the demographics, public health has an extremely thin line to walk here. We do not want to stigmatize the LGBT population in any fashion or form about monkeypox. But we also have to deal with the fact that the vast majority of cases in the developed world have been occurring in that population. It is not by any means exclusive to them. We have certainly seen pediatric cases which demonstrates that non-sexual contact is, of course, a means of transmission. And in those countries where monkeypox transmission is considered endemic, the majority of cases are household contacts. But nevertheless, we do want to make sure that at the same time that the community is given those tools to help protect themselves and those that they work with and interact with, we also want to make sure the general population does not get the wrong idea about monkeypox and believe it is purely a quote unquote gay disease, if you'll pardon the expression. That mistake was made during the HIV epidemic in the 1980s, and we do not want to repeat it again with monkeypox. Making sure that no one blames any one community for this is an important way of making sure that public health efforts are not informed, are not harmed by this particular situation, and also means that providers appropriately have a good index of suspicion of monkeypox in other people. As I've mentioned, it has occurred in some other populations, albeit in small numbers, and we want to make sure that those people are taken care of also. There are many resources available. The one that we really want people to leverage is our text alert updates. You can text COSD monkeypox to 468-311. You can get text alert updates from this number. If you are not signed up, we strongly recommend it. Even if you are not necessarily part of the target population, it's still good to know about it because you may know people that are. And I think that the commission may find this useful to inform your own efforts that you may want to consider to be better informed about what the county is currently up to. We also have a URL, www.sandiegocounty.gov/monkeypoxsd, in which all of the data which I've talked about is available from there, as well as current stuff, and to make sure that you are up to date on what's going on, so that way our community and the folks that live in it can be done so. And that hopefully all San Diegans can get a better understanding of how this affects them. As I've mentioned, even though this is low risk to the general population, it's still something we want to make sure that we contain, and we want to contain it in such a way that doesn't put anybody else at a disadvantage. With that, I will pause here for any questions, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you for this incredible yet overwhelming presentation. Are there any questions, commissioners?
And Chair Nash, we do have a few hands up. We have, looks like one member of the public, Yusuf Miller, and we also have Commissioner Garcias and Commissioner Evans' hands up.
Okay, let's start with the commissioner.
This is Vice Chair Ramirez. I put
Yes.
my thing up.
Oh, okay, sorry,
Oh.
Vice Chair. Feel free to speak.
Yeah, Vice Chair, you go first, please.
That was a very solid presentation, and I thank you. But I've been involved in this issue since the beginning, and being in New York, I've also am part of a White House conference call with national leaders. And to put it bluntly, this administration, in our view, dropped the ball on this because they were informed way back in May that the numbers were coming up in Africa and Europe, and they would soon go here. My concern is the outreach, and I have two questions. The Supervisor Vargas and I were very concerned because we are also a border town, and we do get a lot of, to be very candid, gay men that come from Mexico who come here to dance and party or whatever. And we had asked way at the beginning about bilingual literature, not only Spanish, but Vietnamese, etc. And the response was, okay, we're working on it and stuff. What I'd like to know is, has that been done, and where is this literature going? Also, because this is the summer and the not only the gay nightclubs, but obviously the nightclubs anywhere, be it in the gas lamp. There's a lot of sweating going on, and a lot of the men do take. If you walk into Rich's nightclub, which is the biggest gay nightclub in San Diego County, literally 1,000 people go through those doors. Probably, I would say 80% of the men have their shirts off. And also my concern concerning Club San Diego. When I first brought this up, concerning it's a men's club, well known, and I had asked what was the outreach to this, because there in a weekend could go 1,000 men. My concern with the Club San Diego is that a lot of people that go there are closeted or on the down low. And lead double lives, as well as openly gay men. And I was informed, well, we're going to be taking care of it and so forth. So I would like to know what is the outreach specifically to Club San Diego, and also to the bars and clubs concerning this. I know quite a lot of bar owners, and they've been telling me it's been so-so. And my concern also is that the literature at the beginning of this was not passed out by the county. It was given to a gay group who was told to pass it out in the bars. The first education, which concerned me, was literature that was passed out by the gay community. Why? So what is the situation with that and the outreach? I certainly am aware of the Monday meetings at 10 o'clock. I've attended some of them, but I'm really concerned, especially within the people of color. I think you realize that the Latino community is very high numbers. And other states, obviously, it's not only Latinos, it's people of color, period. And also there's growing numbers, I understand, the Asian Pacific Islander community in other places. And then the second question, and the first one, of course, is outreach. And the second shot that and I certainly am aware that there's not enough vaccines that are being issued, but now everyone's gotten a first shot and are wondering about the second shot. But I must say that things have improved greatly, and I appreciate your presentation.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I'll try to answer those as much as I recall from your question. I'll start with the second dose question first. Even though there are a number of people who have received their first dose, we still want to make sure that as many people get it as possible beforehand, at least until the supply increases. That's why we're putting that aside, at least for now. As soon as we get into a situation where we believe we have sufficient quantity to move towards a second dose availability, we will be pushing that information out as quickly as possible, because we do know that there is a lot of interest in it. As far as outreach, I'll try to go through these as I recall them. You had mentioned about foreign languages. We do have translation efforts undergoing right now, not only for Spanish, but you call out Vietnamese. I think we have a couple other languages also, and we'll be pushing those out as those become available as well, and they're a priority to us. For Club San Diego,
I had to interrupt you, but are you saying that this has not been done, that you don't have the literature as of yet?
It's in progress.
Well, this is very disturbing, because we've been asking this for well over a month. But
I can check on that progress for you, Vice Chair.
I would appreciate that. Go ahead. Thank you.
As far as the specific club outreaches and for Club San Diego, although I know that there have been some discussions, I don't know the details of them, and I can get you that information.
All right, Chair Nash, we have Commissioner Garcia and Commissioner Evans with their hands up.
Thank you. This is Commissioner Garcia. Thank you for your presentation. I wanted to ask, I know since the pandemic, there's been a lot of scrutiny that public health agencies have not been brought up to deal with issues like monkeypox and any future pandemic. Do you see ways that those improvements could be made to the public health services in the county of San Diego? Because it is important that we be prepared for whatever comes next. Right now it's monkeypox, next it could be some other pandemic. And is there more preparation we could do to be prepared for some of these future occurrences? Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Commissioner. I'm gonna try to be circumspect in this answer, but there are, of course, a lot of levels when it comes to quote unquote public health in the United States. And while people interact most directly with their local agency, and reasonably because we want as much local control to respond to local conditions as possible, there's also a certain amount of interplay which comes from the state and federal agencies as well. I'm sure most of you are familiar that the Centers for Disease Control this week has indicated that they're also embarking on a restructuring to try and get information out more quickly and to try and streamline their internal processes so that way they're able to respond more adequately with guidance to emergency outbreaks such as these. I understand the vice chair's frustration with the amount of documentation that's been available. And one thing that we're trying to do on the local level to the extent that we can do is to make sure that we fill that gap. We also want to be cautious that we don't have to reverse ourselves in the middle of those situations, because getting information out too quickly and then having to backtrack on it is sometimes worse than having to late on it at all. One thing I think that we all agreed on, however, is that we do need to have a national discussion about the level of material preparedness that exists. Much of this, both TPOXX and the vaccine come from the Strategic National Stockpile. There is certainly a lot of questions about how up to date the contents of the stockpile are. As a local agency, we have little control over this because it is federally funded, but we certainly do depend on it. And through our state and federal contacts, we are trying to make sure that they are aware of the situation in San Diego and other jurisdictions and the situation it looks like on the ground. The CDC may set national policy and may have a great deal to do with setting how individual jurisdictions receive those kinds of allocations, but the CDC is also not the agency that provides the boots on the ground, if you will, as far as actually interacting with the individual population. For that matter, in California, it's not the state either. We have a very decentralized public health system within it. There are a lot of conversations which have arose as a result of this. I think there are many opportunities for improvement on all of those levels. And I'm sure that as we progress through this, we'll be able to better get an idea of where we need to make those changes.
All right, and we also have Commissioner Evans' hand up.
I don't know if it's a question. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I don't know if it's a question or a statement, but seemingly, and I think my prior colleagues have either stated or alluded to it, these pandemics all seem to be affecting or gearing to a certain group of people, whether it's color or gender orientation. And I'm beginning to wonder, like, how naturally occurring are these? I remember 2008 with the monkeypox, then it was called the prairie pox. And at that time, especially in Japan, they were importing prairie dogs and it was the new vogue pet. But I didn't hear of any, and Japan shut it down when they realized that the prairie dogs were infected with this pox. And again, it was called prairie pox. And now suddenly it's flared up again. And I just cannot believe these, like I said, why is it these groups and these people of who are non-white are the ones that seemingly obtain or get these diseases. It's just so irrational in my mind. And yet you said the disease started, was very prolific in Europe. So that, I don't know if it's a statement or a question, but I just wonder, every pandemic we've had since the 70s has been geared towards, either the LGBT community or the Black community.
Commissioner, I'll try to respond generally to your question because I think it involves more than just MPOX. When we discuss health equity in public health, even though most people conceive of it in terms such as chronic disease, environmental justice, other things of that nature, public health's bread and butter is and always has been communicable disease. And health equity also affects those populations as well, because we saw during COVID-19, those are the populations least able to shelter themselves, the populations least able to avoid workplace exposure because they often had jobs that did not enable them to work remotely. The ones who were in the largest number of family units, meaning that it spread more rapidly through them, especially because their living conditions were more cramped or less stable. And this is an ongoing story when we look at any other kind of disease, even though it's more acute for airborne and air spread diseases. It is certainly a situation which can be reflected in any communicable disease. And I think that the local, state, and national efforts around health equity to ensure that there are as many resources available for these disproportionately affected populations to access is part of the way that we can try and even some of that out. Unfortunately, that is an extremely long process to do. I think many of the folks on this commission themselves understand the roadblocks which exist in order to achieving it. But this is just another example of why health equity ultimately is one of the animating principles of public health generally.
Thank you.
Okay, Chair Nash, we still have Yusuf Miller with his hand up, a member of the public.
Yes, go ahead. Yusuf?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I want to thank the presenter for dealing with the sorry about that. I want to thank the presenter for dealing with the disparities and the reaction that people have towards different groups. Like we said, the reaction to our beloved LGBTQ community with HIV and the reaction to our AAPI community with COVID-19. These were all horrible expressions of hate and bias. And I'm glad you're getting in front of it, and the redesignation of monkeypox to be conscious of the way you redesignate it, such that it doesn't give people who like to go that route any steam. And the equity piece is exactly important in that outreach to the affected communities that are at the high rate. So I want to thank you for those two pieces, and please be conscious moving forward on continuing that perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
And not seeing any other hands up, Chair Nash.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Kaiser, for that wonderful presentation. It was very informative. As a resident of San Diego, we all worry about going about our business, moving from point A to point B to point C. I think that's the worry we have. So I would like to ask you, in summary, how can we as just citizens take care of ourselves? How can we respond to this particular situation? We've gone through COVID. We're tired, we're frustrated. It was go, and then it was stop, then it was go, and it was stop. And we all have families, here. I think if you could give us just some advice, basic advice on how we can protect ourselves and stay healthy and thrive as San Diego citizens.
Thank you, Chair Nash. I'll give sort of a specific answer and I'll give a general answer. We certainly are still dealing with COVID-19. If your benchmark of whether we're out of the pandemic is the flu, well, we're not to that point yet. Even though I think that it's fair to say that COVID-19 as a whole has become less lethal through current immunity and also through the large number of San Diegans who have become vaccinated, as well as changes in Omicron. We're still seeing a number of deaths per month, which eclipses most flu months, even in the depth of winter, and we're seeing that in summer. So if your benchmark is the flu, we're not there yet. And we still want to make sure that people are maintaining those protections, which we know works. If you're not up to date on your vaccines, please get one. Wear a well-fitting, good quality mask, even if indoors, and stay home most of all if you're sick, if you're able to. But that brings me to the more general question. I think that the existence of the commission in general points out to the community that we do have various inequities which need to be rectified in order to make sure that people are not disproportionately affected by communicable or chronic disease. And that is one of the major goals of public health, as I mentioned to the other commissioner. But I also want to point out that as citizens and San Diego residents, we do need to have a discussion about how we can best deal with these impacts that are affecting substantial portions of our society. We do need to figure out a way to have it, though, in a way which is not as badly burdened by the politics. Because if you sit down and talk to people about what health equity means to them, folks get the idea that this is a zero-sum game, that for somebody else to benefit, somebody else has to get screwed. And that is clearly not the case. We can expand that pie so that other people can have the benefit. And once you start framing it in those terms, then you start getting more people on your side, regardless of their particular political persuasions. We're not going to agree on everything, but I think we can agree on the fact that everybody should at least get the same chance, and we're not even to that point yet. As we as a country start to deal with these twin public health emergencies, and where all of us are those of us who are doomsayers and pessimists are wondering what number 3 is going to be, we need to also have that discussion about how these have affected American society and how we can best deal with them in the future. And we're going to have to do that by extricating them from the political baggage that comes along with it. And that's going to be really difficult. It's going to be difficult for those people who think that nothing that we did in COVID-19 was good, and those for the people who thought that everything we did was fine. And as usual, the answer lies somewhere in between. And if we're going to have that national discussion, we want to have, the same thing that we want to talk about race relations in America. We want to talk about how various ethnic groups are affected. Then we're going to have to sit down and have those discussions as cogently and dispassionately as possible. That's going to be very hard for all of us to do. I know it's going to be hard for me. But I think that this commission is ideally positioned to be able to have that discussion, at least for San Diego County. And I look forward to seeing how it develops.
Thank you for that answer. I really want to echo Vice Chair Murray Ramirez in regards to the outreach. We need it. It needs to be improved. I was on the NAACP and another monkeypox call, and that seems to be the common cry is the lack of outreach. I would strongly encourage that subject matter experts like Vice Chair Murray Ramirez and others become a part of the outreach plan. It needs to be done intentionally. Vice Chair did bring out some very specific targets, from bilingual material to the different entertainment sites here in San Diego. So let's ensure that we always include our subject matter experts, our folks that are on the ground, our trusted messengers in the outreach, particularly in the outreach strategic plan, because even during COVID, even though we did finally get it right, I think if we could have started earlier and sooner, we would have been also the outcomes would have been much improved. So I would encourage the County of San Diego, the Department of Public Health, to really reach out to subject matter experts around the outreach. Even if you have to go after a specialized marketing firm to get the word out to the communities, that would be very, very important and should be definitely a #1 priority. Thank you again.
Understood, Chair Nash, and I also want to appreciate Vice Chair Ramirez's comments as well, and I will certainly push that up to our administration.
Thank you. Any other questions? Great presentation, great presentation. We want to quickly move on to our strategic plan next steps. I would like to request that we table the strategic plan next steps. I want us to do a thorough presentation next month where we outline our plan and take about an hour or so to lay it out, and so that we all are on the same page as we move forward with our work here at the commission. So I would like to table that if that's okay with everyone.
And Chair Nash, could I just make a quick statement real quick on that? I just want to let people know that one of the things we did was hire a management fellow that's going to be dedicated support staff, and that person starts on this Friday. So that person will be dedicated to support implementation of the plan. So you have some bandwidth, and I do have a couple recommendations that we can talk about next month.
Great, great. Look forward to meeting our new staff member, and look forward to our next strategic plan meeting. And again, we'll come back with a substantive strategic plan that we all can relate to and follow through on. Let's see. Agenda item 9, discussion of community raised matters. Do we have any? I think we've raised all the community raised matters throughout our discussion today. Okay. Agenda item 10, staff updates. Andrew?
Yeah, I just wanted to provide a few updates in addition to the management fellow that we hired. This is Naras Hakak's last meeting with us. She's got promoted to actually work at CLERB, to be an admin analyst too. So excited for her, good opportunity. She's still going to be a part of the family working with CLERB. But I want to just thank her for all the hard work she did on this committee and commission, and all the behind the scenes work that she's done, and from the award ceremony back in December to all the behind the scenes. So thank you, Naras, and congratulations. And so we'll be filling in behind her, but our management fellow will, you'll be seeing emails from our new person over the next couple of weeks. So I'll make a formal introduction once that person comes on board. And I did also want to introduce our new deputy director. We hired Melissa Bartolome, and there she is right there. She just came on camera. She's actually a 24-year county employee. She's going to really bring some operational support to our office and helping us to make sure we stay out of trouble with contracts and a whole bunch of other things. So excited to have her come on board, and she's going to be such a huge value to our office. So you'll be seeing some stuff from her as well.
Welcome.
And then lastly, Chair Nash, one of the things I want to do was tee up the vacancy conversation.
Yes,
Because
yes.
we did have Tammy Gillies, who some of you may know has resigned and moved out of state, to resign from the HRC. So that is actually a committee appointed seat. So this committee is going to have to appoint somebody else to that seat. And last time, if you remember, we went through a whole process where we looked at data analysis, right? We looked at what the commission makeup was, and then we had applications submitted, and then folks reviewed them, and then we voted to have an appointment. So I just want to tee that up and let you know we'll come back next month with some data information about what the committee makeup is, but also just want to put on your radar that the Committee for the Persons with Disabilities reached out to their staff person to let them know that they wanted to make sure that persons with disabilities was represented on this commission. So that might be something that you want to consider as somebody from an organization that advocates for that community to be a potential candidate for an appointment. So just want to put that on your radar for next meeting. But in addition to that vacancy, we still have 4 board appointed youth seat vacancies. I'm sorry, 3 youth seat vacancies, D1, D2, and D3. So if you could advocate in your communities for youth to apply for the commission, that'd be awesome. And then lastly, we have 2 board appointed vacant seats that aren't youth seats, they're just board appointed seats. And that's District 2 and 3. And we'll be working with those we'll be working with those board offices to try to get some appointments. I see
Thanks for the update. I want to just acknowledge Commissioner Tammy Gillies in a very special public way. I appreciate all the contributions that Commissioner Gillies made to this commission. They were incredibly significant. She brought her energy, she brought her dedication, she brought her expertise in so many different ways that if she weren't a part of this group, this commission, she really took us a long ways by contributing consistently in her dedication. I really do appreciate Tammy Gillies, and I'm gonna miss her. I'm gonna miss her presence. I'm gonna miss her advocacy, particularly around the ADL. I learned a lot. I spent a few hours with Tammy early on, and was very informative and educated on some of the challenges and how they relate to the Human Relations Commission. So she's going to be truly missed, not only just in this commission, but in the San Diego community at large. She's been a major force. And so I wish her well, wish her family well. Also, Kate Chasen, our youth commissioner, who's gone on to college. I can't remember which one, but a great college. Again, she gave us her energy and her time in between all of her studies and her education pursuits, but she also gave us her passion and her attendance. And she's going to be she is a great leader in this community. And I'm excited about what her future brings to all of us. And I just want to wish her well as well, and stay in contact with us as well. So I wanted to acknowledge those two commissioners that are no longer with us. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Chair Nash. We have Commissioner Roberts with her hand up.
Yes.
And we also have Commissioner Murray Ramirez. I just want to let you know that too.
Yes.
Just a very quick question for Andrew. What is our total membership number right now? I know we're 31 seats, but how many are filled right now?
24.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Murray Ramirez.
Yes, thank you. I echo what Chair Nash said about Tammy, but I think it's important for this commission itself to acknowledge the service and the support we get from commissioners when they leave, and also staff. Remember at our awards banquet, we had, I made sure that we acknowledged our staff person that had started with this commission. So I would suggest that if we could come up with a plaque that we give and thank commissioners that leave this commission, and also staff who have served this commission. At the same time, I want to thank Chair Nash for putting on the agenda the monkeypox, and to make all of the commissioners aware that our Chair Nash and Andrew, I don't think there's any event, and they're very diverse, that I go to that I don't see both of them there or one of them there. And you are definitely, Chair Nash, representing this commission very well. You sometimes play major roles, like emceeing Leon Williams' 100th birthday celebration at the county. I think it's very important when we have visibility out there, and she is always recognized, as well as Andrew, with their positions with this commission. And I know it takes time out of your schedules and events. I know they cost money to go and so forth. So I know that I speak on behalf of this commission and acknowledging your visibility and your dedication to the commission, both to Chair Nash and Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Murray Ramirez. Any other announcements?
No, Chair Nash, but we did have one, Yusuf Miller with his hand up.
Oh, yes.
I just had a basic question. What is the age range for the youth seats? And I also wanted to also congratulate Tammy and echo the previous speaker about Ellen Nash and Andrew Strong. They are a power team and they're everywhere that they need to be, as well as a lot of our other people on the chair. I would miss some if I try to list them all. So I'll just start with Ellen Nash and Andrew Strong. Thank you.
And thank you for that. I believe it's 18 to 24. And
I thought 16. It's 16.
Is it 16?
It's 16. Because high school, Kate was in yeah, 16.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll try to recruit for some of those. In the district again, what were the districts?
For the youth seats are D1, D2, and D3.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Yes, please, let's all get to our outreach to get our young people involved, especially young youth leaders. We need them here with us, definitely. Well, with all said and done, I think we can call this meeting adjourned. It was good to see all of your beautiful faces, and let's get to work. Take care. Have a great week. All right.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye-bye.